I'm Virginia Collin, professional family mediator. I'd like to give you a few examples of creative things that people came up with when they were in mediation, figuring out what the terms of their divorce would be. These are things that people decided to do because that's what they thought was best for their family, that are things that a judge could not have ordered if they left it for a court to decide what they had to do. Here's one example of a parenting plan. I had a couple of parents. It was a second marriage for both of them, and each of them had children from the first marriage. And the dad had, just ordinary kind of minimal visitation rights every other weekend and a couple weeks in the summer with his child from the first marriage. The father of the mom's first children had completely disappeared from their lives. He just dropped out. Didn't send birthday cards, didn't send holiday cards, didn't pay child support, just, never communicated with the kids, abandoned them. So she wanted to protect the kids from the second marriage from being abandoned by their father. And the dad wanted to protect himself from being cut off for a large amount of the time from his own kids. And the plan they came up with was a plan that might sound horrible to some other parents in some other circumstances, but it was what both of them thought was going to be the best that they could do for their kids. So they figured, our houses aren't that far apart, 35, 45 minutes, depending on traffic. We live in the same county, so the school system is the same. What's taught in the school, elementary school where the dad lives, is highly similar to what's taught in the elementary school where the mom lives. So it should be okay for these kids to live 1 year with the mom and another year with the dad, to have the full immersion experience of this is what it's like to live with your father, and the full immersion experience of this is what it's like to live with your mom. And each parent could be a full parent with, all the day-to-day chores that go with being the primary parent, and all the day-to-day delights that go with being the primary parent. They could each have turns to do that, and their kids would grow up being very much connected to both parents and knowing that both parents are competent, and that even if they don't like each other anymore, mom and dad treat each other decently, and they let us live comfortably with both of them, with each of them. So already that's something that it would be highly unusual for a court to even consider ordering, that, when you're in first grade, you live with mom. When you're in second grade, you live with dad. Or I think that these parents did it in 2-year segments, and it changed when the kids got to middle school. But in any case, this would have been unusual for a judge to even consider. The piece of it that a judge really couldn't even do, the law wouldn't let the judge do it, would be changing child support in accordance with which parent the kids were living with. So these parents, they figured it out, and they wrote into their mediated agreement, their property settlement agreement for their divorce, that they would come back to mediation 2 months in advance of each time when where the kids were going to live was going to change. And they would look at what their incomes were at that point and the other financial factors that are relevant, and they would recalculate child support and do what the guidelines recommended at that point in the kids' lives. So they're going to change who's paying child support to whom every other year, and they're going to change what amount of child support is being paid every other year. And they've settled it once. It's written into their document. They'll do the adjustments on their own without even needing to go back to court in the future. And the kids will be well provided for. That was their plan. Pretty unusual. Another couple I worked with was figuring out what to do about spousal support. They were pretty clear that at the time they were getting divorced, there was no need for either one of them to pay spousal support to the other. Their incomes were sufficiently similar, and they were gonna, have equal responsibility for the kids and equal ability to earn money in the future. So there just wasn't a need for one parent to be contributing to the economic support of the other parent. However, the mom was an author, and there was a possibility that some of the books she wrote would later, they were for children, they would later be adapted and become movies. And there would be possibly a whole lot of money that came along with the contract to turn the book into a movie. And the dad, the husband, figured that he should have a share of that because he had economically supported her through the time that she was writing these books that might later become a source of wealth. So spousal support can be modified by a court if it is set by a court, but you have to go back to court and reopen the case and ask for modification. What these folks wanted to do was just get it settled now if they could figure out a way to do it. So what they said was there won't be any spousal support now, but also we won't have to go back to court and reopen this later because we've figured it out. If this first book that the mom wrote becomes a movie, then half of the profit the mom gets from that contract to make the movie will go to the dad as a one-time payment of long after divorce spousal support, because he supported her all the time that she was writing that book. If her later books should become movies and she benefits from that economically, the dad has no claim on that income because he wasn't supporting her while she did most of the writing for those books. So that was creative. They figured out what to do. A different couple I was working with on another occasion was also figuring out what to do about spousal support. Their situation was different. The dad had been the breadwinner during their time together. The mom had been a stay-at-home parent for about 10 years, raising their children. And so her ability to earn income was diminished. She wasn't up to date with her job skills. She had no recent references. It was just going to take a while to get back into the workforce and then to be able to earn a good income. It was likely actually that she should go back to school for a couple of years. So they did something that, again, is something a judge can't order. When a judge decides alimony, you pick a number and you pick a duration, and that's what alimony is. If you want to change it later, you have to go back to court and ask to change it. These folks said, we don't need to wait for later. We don't need to go back to court. We can figure this out. For 2 years while she's in school, the mom is going to need $5,000 a month from the dad. After that, she'll be able to get a job, but it won't be a great job yet. We'll cut it down to $2,500 a month. And after 2 years or 3 years, I forget exactly what number they picked, then she'll really be on her feet in her field, and she's smart and she's a hard worker and she's going to do fine. And she will only need just a little bit of spousal support for another couple of years. So we'll cut it down to $1,000 a month. So they had a step down plan. This amount for the first 2 years, this amount for the next couple of years, and a lower amount for after that. And then no more spousal support at all. That's what they wrote. That's what they did. It was settled. Something else that parents can decide when getting divorced, or husband and wife who don't have kids could decide this sort of thing when getting divorced, that you can't ask a judge to do for you, is share care of a pet. In court, a pet is a piece of property. It's like your living room sofa or your dining room table. One of you gets it, the other one doesn't. In mediation, you can talk to each other about what really matters. Are both of you attached to the family dog? Is the dog attached to both of you? Do you need the other person to contribute to veterinary expenses or even just food and shelter expenses to take care of the dog? What role does the dog play in your kids' lives? So one set of parents that I worked with came up with a plan that, it kind of obviously makes sense. It's just not something that a judge could have ordered. And that was that the dog would travel with the kids. So when the kids are with dad, the dog's with dad. When the kids are with mom, the dog's with mom. And they split the veterinary bills 50-50. Creative divorce. Here's one more little thing that a couple of folks I worked with decided to do. In this case, what they did that was unusual had to do with child support. They were in unusual circumstances. The dad, for reasons I won't go into, had to continue to live in the United States. The mom, for economic reasons, had to return to the country that she came from, which was in Eastern Europe. So they're going to have to live on different continents. They have a baby who's not quite a year old. And the dad was on a path to U.S. citizenship and couldn't leave the U.S. for a while, or he would set himself backwards 3 years in that endeavor. So they needed to figure out what to do so that the baby could have a strong relationship with the dad, even though he was going to be living very far away with the mom. They figured it out. There were a lot of components to it, about managing to have communication and for the dad sometimes to have time together with the baby. And the big piece of that was that the dad had to be able to pay for travel. The mom could bring the baby to visit him in the United States if he could pay for their plane tickets. And when he was free to travel abroad, then he could go to Europe and get the baby and take him somewhere for a week or two to have time with him. But that depended on being able to pay the travel expenses to go to Europe. So these two folks agreed to set baseline child support really low. What was important to them was that this baby would be able to have time with his dad. And the mom figured, I can keep my living expenses down. I can earn some money when I'm home, which I can't do in the United States. And I don't have to worry about healthcare costs because the government covers that for everybody in my country. So yeah, let's not bother with very much child support at all. Let's have my husband be able to use the money he can save to make it possible for our son to get together with his dad. And that's what they did.